If anyone's got any questions about the Buteyko method generally, I'll try to answer them. No, that's good. That's okay.
Christopher, I wanted to ask if the Buteyko method is helpful for arthritis and
Yes.
for the connective tissue, and like the asthma and the breathing issues are obvious, but for musculoskeletal issues, how it contributes to healing, and what is your experience with it?
We've treated lots of people with different kinds of arthritis. There's two components. One is the inflammation, and of course, increasing the level of CO2 reduces inflammation. But as you well know, arthritis isn't caused by inflammation. Inflammation is a symptom of arthritis. Arthritis is the accumulation of calcified deposits, which occurs because the pH in the organism is disturbed. And the organism then tries to redistribute calcium by breaking it off bones and so forth, and normalizing the pH. And this calcium, once it's done its job of normalizing the pH, I mean, you don't want to go, alkalosis and drop dead. So the body will do these things. But then now all these calcified deposits have to go somewhere. And where will they go? Now, if they go to the teeth, it's called plaque. And if it goes into the brain, it's called Alzheimer's. And if it goes to the prostate, it's called prostatitis. And if it goes to the joints, within the joints of the body, it's called arthritis. There are some diseases where people even develop what's called spurs, very painful spurs around certain joints and things. And this is due to a disturbance to the pH and the body's mechanism to correct it. And when you normalize the level of CO2, because CO2 is the buffer of the pH, which people think is the acid-alkali balance, it's not exactly, it's more the result of the potential hydrogen. That's why it's called pH, small p, big H, potential hydrogen. Oh. And that's regulated by the level of CO2. So usually people with arthritis can get very quick results in terms of inflammation. So the pain comes off very quickly if they practice hard. But then the job of removing the calcified deposits takes longer, because you've got to make a change to your pH, which you can do with Buteyko method.
Once there is a deformity by a spur or deposits of ossifications in the skeleton, could it be reversed with Buteyko breathing? This is one question. And the other is, why won't we go to more simple methods of alkalizing the body, like adding sodium bicarbonate to the water, or eating alkalizing food?
Well, of course, it doesn't work, is the first reason. And the second thing is to understand why it doesn't work. You're talking about the pH. You've got pH of arterial blood, pH of venal blood, pH of muscles, pH of organs, pH of the stomach, pH of the brain, even pH in blood changes. And you think that by drinking some carbonated water or changing your diet is going to affect it? It'll affect it for a little while, but it's not going to, you need something on a very low basis to have any profound effect. If you spend your career walking the streets looking for coins, I'm sure you'll find some. You will find some coins, but not enough to buy a house. Right. You'll never survive. Well, you might survive, but it won't be much of a life. And if you're trying to control your pH with your food, good grief, that's a very hard way to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I understand. And what about the once there is a deformity of ossification, calcification, could it be reversed with breathing?
Yes, yes, it can be reversed. Yes, 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 yes. Eventually, it comes away because the calcified deposit will be taken off. It will neutralize. So it will, and people even notice that their pee becomes very cloudy sometimes. Yes, cloudy, very cloudy. And that's all the dust of the calcified deposits. It's not necessarily quick, but at least you can take off the inflammation, which is horrendous, and you can stop its progress, which is already beneficial, and you can start working at it to reverse it, and it's absolutely reversible.
The pH of the urine, would it be a good indicator to the...
No. If you do some pauses or some Buteyko method, the pH of your urine will change. It's like a party trick. You can change your pH, right? But as I said, the body, the organs have a pH, the brain has a pH, the stomach has a pH, venal blood, arterial blood, all have their pH. And you're dealing with a big, complicated system. It's like saying, I'm going to take over politics in America, and I'm going to do it with a bag of chocolate chip cookies. It's not enough. You won't make it. It's too big, it's too complicated, it's too deeply embedded within the organism. Simple methods can do little something, but not enough to do anything, because you've got shunt mechanism. All these different pHs have to coordinate with each other. You can make a small change somewhere, you will lose it somewhere else.
Thank you.
Christopher, that might lead into Charles' question.
Oh, yeah?
About the malabsorption of food.
It's a very similar problem. Buteyko railed against this about all the vitamins and minerals and all kinds of things which don't get absorbed because of a low level of CO2. And that's why all people who practice, I mean, those who've got decent scores, reasonably good scores, they discover the vitamins don't work anymore. Because it used to be like, if you stop taking your vitamins, you begin to sag. But the people who like got very high pauses and so forth, they don't bother with vitamins. Well, you might. I take vitamins because I smoke heavily. And I got this thing, you know, I'll take vitamin C and bits and pieces sometimes. But generally speaking, it doesn't because you get enough from your normal diet. I don't know if that's true as much as it was, because the food's getting worse and worse.
Hi, my name is Rosalind. Hi. First of all, thank you for sharing the story that you did. If it wasn't tragic, it's actually hysterical.
It is a bit, isn't it? It's weird.
I mean, I was laughing, but the root of it all is sickness. So my question is actually, what brought you to this work? Okay. And did I hear that you're a smoker, or you were a smoker?
I'm a smoker. Yes.
You continue to be a smoker.
I'll prove it if you like.
I don't need you to prove it. I accept your word. Maybe my next question would be, what do you smoke? But I'll stick with my first question and ask you how were you brought to this work? Thank you.
You're very welcome. And what's your name, by the way?
My name is Rosalind.
Roz. And where are you calling from, Roz?
I'm calling from the Berkshires in Massachusetts.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look at this. Wait, I'm going to show you. Can you see that?
Wow.
I know.
Is that your backyard or a golf course?
No, sirree. This is my backyard. This is nature.
It looks gorgeous.
This is Mother Nature and mountain and yep. Okay.
That looks splendid. If you remember, in 1989, the USSR was collapsing. And back in those days, I was based in Sydney. I was involved in the medical industry, but on a very commercial level. Pathology, laboratories, running clinics and the business side of medicine. I had no interest in treating patients, no interest in disease, background in biochemistry. I'd never get a job as a chemist of any sort, useless. I was a businessman, pure businessman, nothing else. And I had all these, for some reason, there were lots of Russians in eastern suburbs in those days. And so all these deals were always coming up about this collapsing Soviet Union, all this money you could make doing all these deals. And I entertained about 10 or 15 meetings with some very, well, to put it politely, colorful people who made all kinds of extreme offers of business opportunities in the Soviet Union. All I had to do was shovel a lot of money into it and would make an unbelievable amount. I just could never get my head around it. And one of the 30 or 40 deals that was offered to me was this Russian technique from Siberia, which treats all chronic diseases. And I thought that was the comedy one. I thought that was the real beauty. I had military spare parts. We had a license to manufacture cigarette in the Soviet Union, an aluminium smelter, discount prices on stolen objects from the museums, or every kind of scam, Russian dodgy business deal that you can imagine, and some characters that I tell you, I persisted with the meetings because they were hysterical. These people, I've never, one group had a chap in there who was as bald as a badger, a huge man, and on the third meeting, he started coming wearing a toupee, and no one said anything. I didn't say anything. He turned up with hair all of a sudden. These people were off the planet. And I eventually had to say, look, I can't go anywhere with this. I'm not going to do anything with you guys. I wish you all the best and so forth. And about 3 months after all that, one of them rang me and said, you remember that Russian professor with a miracle treatment and so? His protege is in Australia. Would you like to meet him? And I thought, why not? Because these Russians were lots of fun, bottle of vodka, and talk about making millions of dollars with all kinds of fraudulent methods. I might as well talk to this guy for a little while. He was different. He was something very peculiar. He wasn't like the other people that I've met. He was like eyes on fire, very serious, and was quite rude to me, I must say. And for someone who's looking for money into some sort of joint venture and to be quite rude and cold with them, I found very interesting. And that's why I investigated, because of him. And his name was Alexander Stalmatsky. And so I came to the conclusion that, well, I did check his students. I did have some properly qualified people look at the scientific material. And I thought I was somehow, I was under the impression this was a real thing. So I wanted to sort of, and I could easily slot it into my other business interests, because I could get a medical director, I could get rooms in a clinic, I could do all, it was my realm, if you will. So I thought. And when I saw the results, that's when I became interested, actually. And when I had to help him, because he was quite useless at doing anything except teaching the actual method. So I got involved, and the more I got involved, the more interested I became in the method. I had no interest in alternative health whatsoever, none, zero. And I did not want to be a practitioner of any kind whatsoever. I just sort of got sucked into it and became fascinated by it. That's all.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. Can I jump in?
Of course you can.
Hi, Christopher. I was just recently introduced to the method and checked out a video this morning, the first beginner's video, which stated that you needed to give up aerobic training for a couple of weeks in order to get involved with this method. And I am an avid aerobic trainer. So this does not appeal to me at all, to be able to have to give up my aerobics in order to get into this. Could you address that, please?
Sure. Is that video from us? Was that one of our videos?
Yes, it was one of your videos. It was the very, in the beginner video, the very first video.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, you wouldn't do aerobics if you had a damaged ankle, would you?
No, of course not.
Oh.
I mean, not running, not running, but you could do.
You wouldn't do aerobic. You wouldn't do sort of anything, aerobic exercise if you broke your leg. And the same applies to if your breathing is poorly, you don't want to press it. You don't want to put pressure on it until you get control of it. If you're gasping for breath and breathing through your mouth, any good you're doing from your aerobics is being lost through your chronic hyperventilation. But we actually are advocates for more physical exercise, not less, more. We want you to do more exercise. And Buteyko said the ideal amount of physical exercise is 8 hours of work a day. That's what he thought was healthy. So we're for exercise, not against exercise. But if your breathing is out of control, the exercise can damage you more. Just like if you're driving your car and you hear a knock in the engine, well, you don't push the engine, you sort of nurse it gently to a mechanic and say this, it's making a knocking sound. And if you've got a pain in your knee or your ankle, you wouldn't be jumping around doing aerobic things. Not that there's anything wrong with aerobics, but if you're damaged, and so your breathing is the same. If you can do physical work or exercise with your mouth closed and you're breathing light, well, go ahead. But if you have to open your mouth or if you're gasping for air, then you can't, you're not in shape. You damage yourself. You will damage yourself. You'll hurt yourself. And also you won't get your practice up. Yeah.
We've got some people that we're working with at the moment that are ex-athletes, and they've got things like COPD and fibrosis of the lungs in their 60s and 70s. And one woman in her 50s, I think. So that's what happens eventually.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
I mean, what's curious, you've actually opened up a very good can of worms, Danny. Health and fitness are not mutually exclusive, but you can't be really healthy unless you're fit, but you can be very fit and be unhealthy, which is very peculiar, but that's the truth. And that's why many athletes die young. And you can't say they weren't fit. They were extremely fit. And a lot of very high-ranking tennis players suffer from allergies and other problems. You can't say they're not fit. They're extremely fit. That's because it's not related necessarily to the overall proper functioning of the organism. On the other hand, you cannot be very healthy and not have well, when you're old, it's possible because your metabolic rate goes down and it's a different game after 60 or whatever. But it's certainly in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, you have to be quite fit in order to be healthy.
Could you just clarify? As I told you before, I'm not familiar with the method, but there's no breathing whatsoever through the mouth when you're doing aerobics, because that's the general way of breathing. I mean, when you're really, I like to do wind sprints and repetitions where I'm literally running until I'm anaerobic, which is, I look for uphill runs, and it lasts for approximately a minute, and I am totally out of breath, and then I recoup for a couple of minutes before doing another repetition. So are you saying that that's not healthy?
Will damage you. Yes. That's it. I mean, they look at a lot of techniques and deep breathing techniques and so forth. What's Buteyko's idea? Well, you got what's called physiological norms, Danny. blood pressure, pulse, body temperature, sugar level, and rate of respiration. Rate of respiration should be 3 to 4 liters a minute. Pulse should be 50s, 60s, or they say 70s, but okay. Body temperature, well, what is it? It's on C.
98.4 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, 37, whatever. And these are what's called physiological norms. There's nobody walking down the street with 4 times the blood pressure and everything is fine. No, you've got to be within these parameters. And the parameter for respiration is 3 to 4 liters a minute. And most people, you know, are breathing 3-4 times above that. And all Buteyko is saying is that you should breathe within the physiological norms at rest. And your breathing when doing exercise will be in ratio to that anyway. So if you're breathing for 3 or 4 people, you can imagine if you've got blood pressure for 3 or 4 people, or eating for 3 or 4 people, or sugar level for 3 people, how would you like that? And if you're breathing for 3 or 4 people, you run a risk. And if you do it in an accelerated or exaggerated way, you increase the risk.
Well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Very
Christopher,
welcome.
we have some patient people with chat messages here. Michael
Right.
Hanko, if a child grows up practicing good breath hygiene, would Buteyko still ever be necessary?
The principles of Buteyko and the idea is always there. But if a child corrects their breathing and manages their breathing, it gets easy. The more you do it, the easier it gets. And they don't really need to do much. Very, you know, some little bits, and from time to time, they may need to do a little something, but not much, no. No, once, particularly if you get them, if they've gone from puberty to adult and they've like gone across that bridge with high scores, I don't know, maybe they could get some injury or something could happen and they could wreck their breathing and they'd have to recalibrate it again using the method. I don't know, but under normal conditions, I don't think they would have any issues.
Traumatic episodes would be the...
Maybe, yes. I'm just sort of making it up. I don't know. I mean, I think that maybe a traumatic episode or some ghastly infection or somebody thing could, you know, wreck things. But under normal conditions, no, I think that they'll be fine.
What about ADHD? Jennifer asks, can the method help attention deficit or hyperactivity?
Yeah, yes. I remember, you know, the first time I dealt with this, there was some sort of club or group in Singapore, and someone approached me about it because I was doing a lot of work in Singapore because I was living in Indonesia at the time. I was going to Singapore. And I remember this woman rang me and said, is it good with this ADD, they called it back in those days, attention deficit disorder, crazy kids, basically. And I said, I don't know, really, I'll find out. I rang up, spoke to senior practitioners back in those days, and they said, yeah. And we'd also done some work in Australia with it, actually, but I wasn't really sure of the process. Eventually, I was made to understand, and there was a group of maybe 10 or 15 kids, and we gave ourselves extra time because they're all crazy. The kids are running around and you can't control them. And so it takes time. But once they get going, they suffer a lot, you see. They suffer a lot. And the parents, I'm not blaming the parents, but the parents don't realize sometimes how much these kids suffer. I don't think, well, I certainly didn't. They just look like crazy people, you know, kids have been crazy. But they really were not having a good time. And as soon as they managed to get in control of themselves, they could grip themselves somehow. And they loved it. And the weird thing is that back in those days, this video cameras and things like that was still fairly new. And all these kids could, in the first day of the workshop, it's like a complete shit fight. There's nothing going on. I'm talking to kids, don't give them milk, don't do this, get them to hold their breath. None of the kids are paying attention. The mothers are like, this is not going to work. I said, don't worry, we'll just keep on going until we'll slowly get there. On the last day of the workshop, the fathers turned up, all Chinese, almost 90% Chinese, all with their video cameras, because their kids could stay still for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, without moving anything, staying as still as a statue. And they had never seen that before in their lives. All of them, all kids, all like in a row, like 20 little Buddhas, dead still, not moving a toe, blinking, nothing. That's how good they got within, well, it was 2 weeks, 2 5-day things. The first 3 or 4 days, I don't know, this was just like, I don't know how anything got started. But some kids started and others copied them, and then one thing and the other, and we managed our way. Very good results, terrific results. But you've got to be patient, because they're not going to pay attention and they're not going to be cooperative necessarily in the beginning, and you can't hassle them too much. You've got to be somehow, and once they catch on to feeling relaxed, possibly for the first time in their life, they like it. So kids stick to this method very well.
Then there are a couple of questions related. How does the method and lifestyle correct hormonal issues? And is acne a sign of a low control pause? And how low?
Hormones are steroid. You have different organs producing hormones in the body, and the regulation of them is controlled by carbon dioxide. And so when the level of carbon dioxide normalizes and improves, all the hormones work better. Thyroid and the insulin production and corticosteroid and all this stuff, it all normalizes. Hormones, no one knows anything about hormones. I mean, Starling discovered them and then found out that there were 8 primary ones and there's 16 secondary ones and this and that. It's a very complicated system, and anyone who really understands or has any experience with hormones will tell you, who knows? They compensate for each other. You see this when you use the method, how things normalize. That's what I can say about hormonal issues. Even cases where women, I don't know why this is, it does happen to practitioners for some reason. You start dealing with a certain kind of patient and you get more of the same thing. Like, it's weird. Well, I was in Indonesia and I went through this thing over a 2-year period. I must have seen 30 or 40 women with thyroid problems where they had part or whole of the thyroid removed because it was overactive. This was a very clever bit of surgery. They remove half your thyroid because it's overactive, and now it's underactive, and they're taking thyroxine. And they're all able to come off thyroxine, including the ones who had no thyroid gland left. So how do you work that one out? Well, according to Buteyko, the other hormones will compensate. How does that work? Well, again, it's like this carbon chemistry, carbonate, bicarbonate, carbamate, dissolved CO2 and all this base and all this stuff. The same thing is being replicated in the hormonal thing. So it's dreadfully complicated, but it's regulated by CO2. And I can blather on about it, but do I really understand the mechanism? No. I know it works. I know they can come off their thyroxine and insulin and corticosteroid. Yes, they don't need them anymore. That's what I know. But the mechanism, I know as the pauses go up, in a linear fashion, the problems become less.
And acne and skin disorders?
Acne. Oh, no, no clue. I mean, I know people perfectly healthy teenagers with a face like a relief map of Switzerland, and their pores are fantastic. And there are other people there that have got not a blemish, and it's the reverse. So I have no strong opinions on it. I think some long-term acne could be something different, but teenage acne, I don't know. I don't think it's anything.
Christopher, I wanted to ask you about how this method contributing to the hydration of the body in the cellular level. Does the body become more hydrated?
You mean how much water you should have?
No. You can drink lots of water and still you don't quench the cells. You feel always dry and thirsty. So I wonder if this breathing method can help in the cellular level to...
This is an issue of the potassium pump, sodium potassium pump or balance. And you're just go to a mirror and breathe on it, and you'll see the moisture in your, or if you're in a very cold place, you know, you can see the moisture. And if you're over breathing, you are losing a lot of moisture. And then what do? You drink more water. Very clever. Now you will have sodium deficiency. Your electrolytes will fall, obviously. Yeah? And now you'll have some kind of fatigue or something. It's unbelievable. If you ask your great-grandmother, say, what about how much water did you drink? So I never drink water. Are you crazy? Maybe I might have a glass, a mouthful, but nobody drinks water. You're joking. You drink beer good, but water. Nowadays, you see people walking down the street. They're going for a walk. They're bringing a bottle of water with them in case that maybe they'll need water. What's going on? They are breathing for 3 or 4 people. They are losing a lot of water vapor, and then they drink to replenish it, and then they disturb the potassium sodium pump, and you know they become. And I think a lot of chronic fatigue comes from this. And there's terrible advice to drink 8 glasses of water a day, and all this drink plenty of water. What sort of stupidity is this?
It's like you are diluting the electrolytes.
And then you'll get fatigue and so forth. If you have thirst, you should drink. If you don't have thirst, don't drink. That's it. But if you're breathing for 3 people or 4 people or whatever, there's no solution. Drink more, drink less. If you drink less, you'll become dehydrated. If you drink more, you'll become fatigued. It's like, how do you have a good weekend in Paris if you've got no money? Well, you don't have a good weekend in Paris. That's it. There's nothing you can do if you're breathing for 4 people. And then, well, what will it be? Will it be migraine, or will it be angina, or will it be asthma, or will it be dehydration? Well, you know, it's luck of the draw, isn't it? Just you want to hope it's not stroke.
Speaking of spending money, Elaine asks, will the method eventually heal constipation? It went away and then came back. What sort of level of practice is required, Christopher? Or Elaine, you might like to put the question differently.
I thought you said it really well. I've been practicing in a dedicated manner for 2.5 years, and the constipation went away after 6 months of practice and came back a year later, and has been with me ever since, even though I eat really well and I practice in a very dedicated manner.
I think there's something going on there. There's some kind of issue there which needs to be addressed. And I would be looking at some fasting and things like that. And maybe some kind of treatment or whatever, some approach. But something is going on. And it will not remain like that. Even if you don't do anything, just do your pauses, and you're, you know, obviously suffering with constipation, it will eventually come to right if you're doing big pauses. But I wouldn't wait around. I would fast or something, and then fasting and pushing pauses and see what happens. Something is wrong there.
Okay.
Take a view to treating it. Yes.
Okay. I've been conducting an experiment based on what I learned in the monthly free calls. So for 20 days or 20 something days now, I've been doing 25 MPs a day and 15 MPs of 120 to see if I can make a change.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's good, but you should do some fasting for a few days.
Okay.
You know, it's not so much a cure always, but it will identify what's wrong. Something will start to act up. You'll notice something is, oh, what's that? You know, yeah, that's what I would recommend. But be in touch directly, Elaine, and we'll make a plan to do something. Don't start on your own.
Okay, I'll be in touch. Thank you. Thank you.
That's a point. Fasting is a serious practice, so it's not to be taken on lightly.
Yeah, you should have some idea why you're doing it and what for. Buteyko practitioners, they should fast a lot to learn how it works and learn what it is. I went for long fasts because of Stalmatsky. You know, he tricked me into it. And I went along with it. And there was extraordinary things. I was very surprised at what you can do with fasting. It's a very valuable tool. The problem is that objective and subjective can be a bit blurred when it's you conducting the fasting and you're doing the fasting, you know. I do remember I went through a stage after about 15 or 20 days, I couldn't bear to look at people eating food. They're revolting pigs, you know, and they're eating like, and it just looked disgusting. And my level of energy was through the roof. I couldn't even sleep. I could sleep for 2 hours max or 3 hours. The longest fast was like 70 days or something. It took 3 or 4 days just to be able to start to eat, and even that was very difficult.
What did you drink during the fasting? How did you keep?
Not much, maybe a mouthful of water now and again. That's about it.
But what about the electrolytes? Sodium, potassium?
We didn't do anything about that.
And what is Buteyko's approach to vegan diet, to food which is light and airy?
He believed that some people had he called it wolf metabolism. They need meat. They need meat. No, they'll be in trouble if they don't eat meat. And some people should go more toward other things. But if your control pause is high, it doesn't really matter. You eat what you feel like. Diet doesn't do much. I'm sorry. Diet can make you really, really sick. You know, this Super Size Me, wonderful documentary, a guy who ate McDonald's, and after 3 weeks, he can become fat, stupid, high blood pressure, everything falling to pieces, living on this junk food. Yes, so food can be very negative. Unfortunately, it can't be very positive. You know, and the proof is that when people are sick, they eat yogurt, this, that, the special leafy green. It's not going to do much. Food will make you really sick, and healthy food, it won't do much. Look at it another way. If you stop sleeping, you'll be dead in 2 weeks. If you stop eating, you'll be dead in a month. If you stop breathing, you'll be dead in a few minutes. So there's your level of importance. Ultimately, if you don't eat, you'll starve and you'll die. I understand.
But what if, sometimes the inflammation is a result of lack, not of redundancy. Like I'm very thin, and I'm afraid that if I will fast or do the Buteyko, I will lose more weight, which can be.
It doesn't work like that. You might gain weight. People who are overweight lose weight, and people who are underweight gain weight. The concept of normalcy or normoxia in gas levels is really misunderstood. You know, who says you will lose weight? Yeah, you might lose some because you're not eating. Okay, fine. But look, even at the idea of being overweight, people say, I'm overweight because I eat too much. Now, think about that. This person is 15 kilos overweight because they eat too much. But why do they remain at 15 kilos, roughly overweight? Shouldn't they get bigger and bigger and bigger and eventually be the size of a Volkswagen or something? No, they stay at a certain level of weight, overweightness in particular, because that's to do with toxicity. The body needs to store toxins. And people who are underweight, well, we had lots of the underweight people are all the ones who live to long ages. You know, it's very, I'm not saying it's funny, but I mean funny as in interesting, not funny as in ha-ha. But all these people who went through these concentration camps and terrible, terrible starvations and nearly died from starvation, it's hard for them to find the ones who did these crimes. They're all dead. The victims are all still alive because they fasted.
So why do we die eventually? If one practices the Buteyko method and his gases are normalized in the blood, like he theoretically he would live, the system will work perpetual mobile, it will never.
I don't think that's the way nature works. I think the organism has its destruction in the seeds of its creation. I don't think it works that way. I know that there's a certain timing. Even Buteyko knew when he's dying because his control pause is collapsing, nothing to do. He couldn't do anything. And everyone knows. Everyone goes to the ward for the terminally ill. Everyone is breathing like crazy. And you go to the maternity ward and the babies breathing, their breathing is invisible. And so you can see there's a stark difference. And you can use the method to correct your breathing or to compensate for it. But eventually you run out of tricks.
Also, I wanted to ask you, in the Buteyko method, there are all kinds of streams. There is the more Russian method, which is really very radical. You go full force into it. And I know that there are practitioners who take it very, very slowly and like very gently.
You need to make sure you get some results, because it's a bit like, it reminds me actually of yoga, that like you have now this Kentucky Fried Yoga where the practitioner learns in a couple of weeks and there's a little bit of Indian music and a little few candles going or something, and they do a few stretches. This is not yoga. This is some kind of recreation for bored housewives. Nothing against bored housewives. If I like stretching, it's good. But it's not yoga. And it's shameful to call it yoga. And it's shameful. Some of these practitioners, well, you know, in the part of me, like, I couldn't be bothered. But another part of me gets furious because they are teaching people to breathe slowly. What they took from Buteyko method, they're not qualified practitioners, by the way. They're like, I'm not saying they want to do ill or they're horrible or bad, but they're unqualified and they're doing damage to people. And they want to calm the breathing down and chill everything out and make it nice. And they even teach people to breathe more slowly. And to breathe more slowly is to breathe more deeply, which is the very antithesis of what Buteyko taught. The exact opposite. Or in Hungarian, opposite. You know, exactly the reverse of what he taught. He taught reducing the depth of breathing. And these easy breathing, Buteyko, natural, softly, softly, they end up slowing the breathing down and making the situation worse. And then calling it Buteyko method. Why didn't they call it after their own name? Call it the John Smith method. Why steal someone's name for? That's what I don't understand. I'm not saying that I stick exactly to what Buteyko said, but I try as much as I can remember. I don't add anything of mine, well, some small things, but nothing in terms of his method did I create, nothing. And how what they do, this easy approach and going slow and all this kind of, if you've got a disease that you want treated, you better ask them that you want to meet one of their success cases. Because it's really, I don't know, I'm quite cross about it sometimes. I mean, a lot of the time I couldn't care. They're going to do what they're going to do. What are you going to do about it? But why don't they call it their own name? Why steal someone else's name for?
Yeah.
Crooks.
Can you?
They even write books too. They write books as well, you know, these people.
We do need to start finishing. You've been going over an hour and a half. We've got a couple of questions on the chat, Christopher, and Nama, it sounds like you've got something else.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Christopher about, you know, I am interested in the aging process, which is actually dehydrating. And you mentioned the ossification process because of the lack of alkalinity of the organs. And you mentioned that the Buteyko method can help reverse this, but it takes time. So approximately, when there are already deformities in the fascia, in the joints and bones, you know, you mentioned spurs, for example, how much time does it take to, I know it's a stupid question and yet I cannot resist it.
It would vary according to the circumstances, what their pauses were, are they able to improve, by what degree do they improve? It's a bit like saying, I've got terrible debts. If I work hard, how long will it take me to pay them off? Like, how much debt and how much do you earn? And, you know, what time are we talking about? So I can't answer specifics. But I can say that with arthritic pain and so forth, the pain starts to improve within a week or less, starts to improve. And then really they get much better in terms of mobility, and slowly. And then what about to remove the calcified deposits? That will vary, but we had lots of cases where it was completely reversed. But if somebody is old and the arthritis is very severe, and there are many other health issues they've got, doing this method to the degree that you can in the time that you've got will ameliorate the situation. But you practically, it's like saying, can I learn to play the violin when I'm 70 years old? You can, why not, you know? Can I become a concert virtuoso? Well, maybe, but it's unlikely, you know? So it depends on lots of factors.
Thank you, Christopher. Eileen asks if Professor Buteyko studied blood types. For example, do different blood types respond differently to breathing?
Yes, he did. There was some genetic stuff, but still he felt that the first thing is to normalize the breathing so its physiological norms are achieved in terms of respiration. And then after that, to gradually incorporate increasing amounts of physical effort and work. And as far as your blood type and your relationship to food, that would come naturally. Your appetite would incline toward a certain direction. And some people require meat and some people require less or not meat, shall we say. And so that would come naturally. There was a long list of foods which, in the order of how they harm the breathing, but it was more related to people with a below optimal CP. And when the CP was normalized, it didn't seem to matter too much. I mean, you wouldn't be inclined to overeat and you wouldn't be inclined to eat those things which were not good for you. That was what would happen.
Well, this might be a good question to finish on. Ros asks, would you speak to reducing the depth of breathing, which is what it's all about?
Yes. Well, carbon dioxide is what you want to conserve. Your body produces it, and you want to conserve it. And carbon dioxide is heavier than oxygen and nitrogen. And oxygen and nitrogen, like there's very little carbon dioxide in the air that we live in, nearly nothing. And the amount in our body is 200 times higher. The level in the air, they say 0.035 or 38 or 39 or whatever, okay, fine. What is it that? Less than 1/3 of 1%. And the level in the body needs to be 6.5, 7%, depends where you're checking. And so there's a very sharp contrast. And much like, you know, if you make a soup or something and you're going to serve the soup out, you got to stir it first. Otherwise, some people will get just the water and some people at the end will get all the potatoes. So the heavy stuff falls lower because of the increased specific gravity. And so the idea should be to as little as possible to disturb the gas mixture. And the air should be very, very slight and light. When you're doing physical exercise, of course, your breathing will deepen and will increase in the frequency, but that'll be compensated by the increased levels of CO2 that you produce within the body. So you, of course, you have to breathe more when you are doing more exertion. But the way to measure things is when you're at rest. So how do you breathe less? Well, it's to make it shallower, to make the in-breaths smaller, lighter, shorter. And the out-breath, you don't have to worry about. What goes in will go out by itself. Of course, what's required is to retrain the respiratory center, because if you only do shallow breathing, then it will create a compensation mechanism, or it'll create a compensation. So what you do will be undone very easily. And of course, you breathe 20 to 30,000 times a day. So you breathe so frequently. How can you watch all your breathing? And so what you gained in the morning, you might lose in the afternoon. And the breathing pattern will change according to circumstances, your level of stress, attention, the company in which you are, the environment. So many things will change your breathing pattern. The permutations of the things that exert influence are almost infinite. But in terms of practice, what can you do? Breath holding is, of course, one of the keys, which is a certain methodological approach to that. And also to practice what we call shallow breathing. Well, it's not shallow, actually, it's normal breathing, but it's comparatively shallow. You think it's very shallow. And then for all that to be accompanied with usually temporary enforced lifestyle changes, and you've got to get rid of habits which are detrimental, or reduce them at least, and encourage habits which are beneficial. And according to what your situation is, some people just want to get a bit healthier. Some people want to treat a real disease. Both are possible. And both approaches are predicated on the same fundamental understanding. My golf swing is probably 95% as good as Tiger Woods. They look the same. Somehow he manages to squeeze $20 million a year out of his golf swing. I just lose lots of balls. So most of it's the same, but the little bit that's different is a big difference. It's much the same with this method. Everyone breathes, so we know how to breathe. You know very well how to breathe. You're doing it 20 to 30,000 times a day. But if your breathing, for whatever reason, has become in disequilibrium and you're losing lots of CO2, well, you will suffer the consequences of the loss of CO2. And that is diverse beyond belief almost, because CO2 is the basis of all organic life. And in the organism, it's not just a gas, it enters as a gas and then it works with the plasma, it affects the pH, it determines the threshold of excitability of the nervous system, it regulates the hormones, it's what liberates oxygen from the hemoglobin, which is the oxygenation. It regulates the rate at which neurons synapse with brain cells, so your intellect is very much affected. It determines the aperture of all vessels. CO2 is like what money is to the banking system. No money, no banks. It's all about money. Money coming in, checks, deposits, cash, this, that. It's all about money. No money, you don't need a bank. No CO2, there's no life. All organic life is dependent upon CO2. In fact, as I think it was Maisha who said, it's more essential than oxygen, but both are essential, so let's not go there. But it's certainly, its influence is massive, and that's a whole another subject.
Christopher, that sounds like a very good conclusion. Would you like to formally close, or?
All right, okay. I formally close this meeting. Thank you very much for those people who've sat through this lecture. I hope you've got some benefits, some, what can I say? More than 30 years, I've been encouraging people to learn. I don't know, I've never had anyone say to me, I did all this work, I practiced, and it wasn't any good. It wasn't worth it. I never had that. Maybe I did once or twice, but over the 20,000 or more students, it's always the same. And a lot of the times they had to do a lot more work than they intended to do. But I don't really have any, no one comes to my mind, just a couple of crazies here and there, but really situation where people seriously practiced, and you don't have to practice for long before you see some positive results. You don't have to wait for 6 months or a year before you see some improvement. You'll see fundamental change, usually within a few days, but you've got to put some work into it. Younger you are, the more, I would say kids, it would be really a wonderful thing if this could be incorporated, because so easy to treat children, easy peasy, so no complications, no deep diseases, not much in the way of toxins, easy. We would save such a lot of trauma, misery, suffering, expense, unnecessary suffering on a massive scale. Oh, well, we've got what we've got. Anyone who wants to try to avoid these sorts of health issues should look at this method and really be clear and try to understand what they're doing before they commit themselves. But at least you should try it. It's worth it.
Christopher, thank you very much.
Right.
If anybody wants any information, then we can send information.
Any questions, let us know.
Yeah.
All right then, well, keep practicing and see you soon.
Thank you very much.